Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content, from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm David Duarte, your host. Whether you're here live, catching a replay, or listening later, I am super delighted you are here with us. You are the reason this show is so much fun to do. I listen to everything. Every comment's great. Last week, a lot of comments. And every moment you spend here means a great deal to me, so I appreciate it. Well, at Music for All and within the Culture Before Content community, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music. And none of this happens without support, and we are incredibly grateful to Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor, for helping bring this mission to life. So if you're watching live, thank you so much. It is great to hear you, see you. I guess I can't really see you yet. Oh, maybe I can see you soon. But if you want to, every Saturday on the Music for All Facebook page to participate, you can just go to the Music for All Facebook page, navigate to the events tab, and respond if you're interested. And then it pops up the show for you. Then on Sunday, we go live right here. And you can also watch and join the conversation on YouTube. Just head over to YouTube, search for Music for All, click on the live tab, and there we are. You'll find us. It's really easy to do. And whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can always jump into the chat, leave a comment, be a part of the show. And I just want to remind people, you can always leave a chat after. It's just not live, but we can always get them. And I love reading every one of them. So if you miss it live, don't worry. They're very impressive. In audio only episodes drop every single Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major platforms. However you tune in, you can find every single episode, audio or video, at musicforall.org/podcast. And do listen to the audio ones. They're really great. I listen to them in the car. I actually don't mind hearing the sound of my voice. All right. Well, enough of that with that. Let's get to the show. Everyone doing okay with the time change, except for you Arizonans? Are you doing good? It's great. All right. So today on Culture Before Content, I am talking with Christopher McCurdy. He is the director of bands at Grant High School in Portland, Oregon, and a 2025 Yamaha 40 under 40 music educator. His program is built on a bold idea. Music education brings every student to life, not just those who audition well, arrive early, or can afford high quality instruments. In addition to a very well-rounded band program, he has built an incredibly great jazz program that welcomes beginners, creates a jazz ensemble specifically for young women and gender diverse students, and he's established mentorship systems to make jazz culture as accessible as scales and time signatures. It's great. We're going to talk about it. He's not just teaching music, he's rebuilding what access to the arts looks like in public schools. So without further ado, please welcome to the show, Mr. Christopher McCurdy.
Hey, David. How's it going?
Hey, that's good. I was reading your little comment about moving the mic closer. I got a little distracted there, so I apologize for that. But okay. So the reason I've wanted to have you on the show is a couple of reasons. Number one is we were introduced to each other through a mutual friend who just said, "Hey, I know this guy," and he probably said the same thing. I know this guy. So that kind of started our first conversation. But then when I moved up here to the Pacific Northwest, I had the opportunity to hear your band. And that just changed life in an instant. So to my audience, to my listeners, also viewers, I guess I'm going to be way more inclusive when I think about these things. This man has one of the most incredible bands I have ever heard in my life. And one of those reasons I wanted you on is so we can kind of share that. And the other reason I wanted you on is kind of like something recent. We had that big snafu in Portland public schools about the pet band. And I thought that would be a cool little story. I like the eye roll. I just a little cool little story. That's my favorite there. But just a cool little story to talk about how important it is and why it happened and all that. Maybe just a little bit of story so our listeners can learn, because I think one of the values that I got from that story is it's that how important music is to kids and how important it is to us adults, and that we don't just do things. And sometimes the right thing to do looks like, I don't want to say the wrong thing to do. It just looks different. But, let's start with a little about, maybe talk about your background, your instrument stuff, and then maybe talk about your program, and we'll see where this conversation takes us. So Chris McCurdy, the floor is yours. Who are you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for having me once again. It feels weird talking about myself and my program, but it's cool. I'm really happy to kind of share the unique parts of it and what we've got going on. But I was originally from the Midwest. I basically did all the way through 7th grade in the Midwest in the Illinois, Chicago area. And moved out to Washington and finished high school up there. So I've kind of got the the fundamentals of a Midwest musician with some West Coast influence. Did both of my degrees down at the University of Oregon, my master's and my bachelor's in music ed. And I worked with Eric Wiltshire and the marching band down there as well, and studied conducting with Dr. Rodney Dorsey, who's now at FSU. Or Indiana, I don't know. He's been getting a lot of big jobs. It's hard to keep track lately. Saxophone player by trade, and play some woodwinds as well. And in my 5th year here at Grant High School, I did 4 at Lake Ridge in Lake Oswego, which is a suburb of Portland before that. And I think that covers me.
I kind of forgot that when I moved here up to Washington, you had started. Grant was your first year at Grant, and then we both started at the same year. Except I accidentally moved this year. Who knew?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and like I said, and to our audience, I've known each other. Like I said, we've known each other, but we've really never have talked to each other. This will be actually our first chit chat. But
yeah.
So my impression is, I've got to judge your bands a few times, and rare in my time as a judge do I ever get super surprised. And so to the audience out there, last year when I got to hear your jazz band at the Skyview Jazz Festival, it was just a pure clinic. And I want to say this to the audience. When I listen to band programs, listening to a top band play incredibly well is super fun and all. But when the second band and the third band are just as incredible, that says something about the culture of what's going on. And that's why I wanted to have you here, because, I've been following you. I follow you. You're on Facebook, and I get to see some of the things, how you're doing in the Oregon competitions. But part of that is just the pure admiration for the things that you've accomplished in a very short amount of time, because 5 years is, just really getting to the tip of the iceberg. But, maybe talk a little bit, what is your philosophy on building a band program? Because what you've done and what you've overtaken has just been spectacular.
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to the director that I took over for. So my first year, if you've done the math, was basically the first year that Oregon students were coming back into buildings. And so while it was, an odd transition point, it was actually a very clean transition, because, the kids had been really out of the building the last 2 years. That being said, Brian McFadden, who was the director before me, I don't know how he did it online, but I walked in and his kids were playing so well, and they were so engaged, and they were so ready and hungry to really take it to the next level. And so I could immediately tell that he had done more work during online school than I had, because I was just floored with, there were a lot of moments with the students that were there where I was like, it doesn't seem like you guys had been out of school for 2 years. So I took over a good program, and I guess my philosophy has been to keep, hard work and personhood at the front of it, and then to find the freedom or make the freedom to create the program in an image that I think makes the most sense for our population. And so what that looks like as far as during my day is honestly, it looks a lot different than most high schools. All of our jazz classes are during the day, as well as our concert bands. We have, like you said, 3 levels of big band, 2 levels of concert band, and then a jazz lab improvisation course. And the jazz lab is kind of our entry point for students that may not have any experience with jazz or kind of formal music education as well. And it didn't start like that. I took over and I had a string orchestra, and I had a percussion ensemble as well, and then 2 levels of big band. And so we kept growing and growing over the last 2 years, especially as things have kind of really hit the ground running. And, our choir director loves early music and said, I would, love to take on the strings as the jazz program was ballooning, because we were at, about 100 kids that wanted to be involved with just jazz courses alone. And so obviously I want to make that space if we can. And John, our choir director, was very into that prospect. And then percussion ensemble, it's one of those classes that I loved teaching, and it was great to have them all together at once. But if we can make a spot for more students in different genres, that's the way that we kind of wanted to run it. So yeah, it looks different, but I think it looks like an image of what I believe high school band can be.
One of my opinions, and this is, I used to be an administrator. And then, so when when I went, I did my 11 years of time up there at the district office. I'd always thought to myself, when I come back, I'm going to do it the way that I think works best for wherever I'm at. And I think that's amazing that you've been given that freedom to do what you want to do. Because I think, when I got to Washougal, one of the big things I wanted was to offer a music class that was for not musicians. That's where my music production background came to be. And that class started getting popular. And that was one of those things that I really wanted to build. I still want to build. I'm kind of back to, my bands again. But that music production was an opportunity where I could reach students who didn't have access to music, and, careers that are totally amazing in a different way. But, and more than that, also, I'm talking about working with your bands. I've worked with your band once. I did the sight reading ones, and then I did the floor. But your kids are just so personable. And I think that just I remember working with your alto players. I just started talking to them like we were best friends, and they just came along for the ride, and it was fantastic. And it was like all your bands were like that. And so, like, what are some of your cultural beliefs? And just like when you took over the program, how does someone establish those kind of, not first off relationships, but then get the kids to also just be that way as members of your band? Because you definitely have a different culture with your students.
Yeah. I appreciate that is noticed. I think they're great. I think they're real cute. They work really, really hard. I'll tip it up. Work hard and be nice to people is basically kind of the motto. And I think a lot of what we do as educators, general big E educators, is create students that are reliable and that care for other people and that can work as a team and think contextually and make things. And so I tell them often that if I was, 250 pounds and 6'5", I'd probably be coaching a sport and teaching these same concepts of reliability and accountability and all of that. And the idea that, music is something that's meant to be shared. And I think a lot of their personality comes out when we shed the idea of a perfect performance, or we shed the idea of winning, or anything like that. And I think jazz is a really easy medium to do that with, because it's so personally expressive, and there's so much freedom that directors have to make the music what they want it to sound like. And that's part of the genre, right? Is creation and recreation, and finding what you think the value in the music is. And they're comfortable. They understand that they've worked really hard, and that they're well trained, and that they can do anything, and that the people in front of them are not there to judge them or critique them. I mean, that's their job formally, but what they're really there to do is to help them become better players, and realize some areas that maybe they can shore up. But again, I mean, with me, it's all personality. I think a lot of the great bands and choirs and orchestras and any organization, if you have somebody that is really outwardly passionate and excited at the top, it's infectious. And then, you don't have to do it all once the kids get it. And I think that's another big kind of point, is that you really can't do it all. You guys got the banana picture right away.
Yeah, I was just, okay. I have to ask. Okay, so if you're listening to a rebroadcast, because I don't think we do the rebroadcast of the listening live, but there's a picture of all the kids eating bananas, and I am now curious, why are your kids eating bananas?
Yeah, and I hope all the repair techs aren't listening. But we do have a banana before we go on stage at every big festival, and I don't even remember how it started one year. We were looking up, there's one kid doing a project on potassium or something. And I remembered that, like, a director I had heard about in the past, did bananas as well. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And they thought it was so funny that we were all just eating bananas at the same time. And, it's one of those silly little band traditions that just kind of sticks. And now they get mad if I forget the bananas. And, the grocery clerk at 6:30 in the morning, when I'm running around with 50 bananas, will give you a weird look. But to have them all find something to come together in as they're putting their instruments together before a gig is always really special. And I love kind of sitting and watching them just be weird together.
I think that's what we high school band directors do. We excel at our weird kids doing things together. I mean that's it's
Right.
just awesome. But let's talk a little bit about your program a little bit in terms of like, like I said, it to me after hearing your bands play, like your top band is just incredible style, incredibly good things. But the third band just as stylistically, how do you get your kids to develop? I mean, what do you have a process that you have? I mean, is there some magic? What's your magic to your development of your program?
Mm. When I figure that out, I'll let you know.
Oh,
And
good.
I'll change the world.
Well, so much for this blank page here.
Yeah, right. No, here's kind of how we fundamentally do it is a lot of student accountability, a lot of talking back and forth. And we can go into, concert band versus jazz band, but you asked about jazz band, so we'll go there. For me, it's everybody's got to be singing all the time, singing through stuff. Everybody's got to be listening. We're singing with recordings. And then really establishing a incredibly good fundamental swing, and knowing the differences between swings and shuffles and styles and all of that kind of knowledge that colleges will beat you over the head with in the concert band realm, but many universities will glaze over the jazz side and they're like, this is swing and this is not swing, this is Latin, and then there's jazz band, and that's it. And it's like a lot of this I just gained by watching really great jazz educators and then stealing every PDF I ever could. But we do have a fundamental kind of swing progression that we do at the beginning of every single year. And I do like, having 3 big bands. One thing we did this year is, I grabbed a movement. Every band played something out of the Kansas City Suite, Benny Carter. And it's a truly fundamental suite that's got different tempos, styles, but it's all just like pure bassy swing. And every band does it. And so they all have this kind of like shared ownership of, yeah, Jazz 3 is doing Vine Street Rumble and Jazz 1 is doing Rompin' at the Reno, but we're all part of something and we're all creating something. And then, like you said, institutional knowledge coming down. It's critically important, because any band director that thinks they can do it all is wrong, flat out. You really can't. So you need to find areas that you feel comfortable trusting the students to take it and run with it. And then, focus on the areas you don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I always tell people I don't know anything. I've captured everything from everybody else, and I've just hung out with a lot of cool people. I mean, I really have. And Craig, if you're listening, I get to hang out with the coolest person every single day at work. It's super awesome. But and let's talk about the cultural side of like your students. Is it kind of like how do your students socialize with each other? Is there like, I always say student, when I'm thinking marching band because it's that season. I don't have a marching band, so I don't have that season. But do you have is it leadership? Is it because I just assume that you teach your kids how to be get along with each other. What does your social structure look like in your band?
Yeah, we have a pretty loose band council, and we don't have a marching band either. We don't actually have a home football field, so it would be really difficult to do a marching band here. But even if we did, I see the value of marching band that a lot of people have, and I just have structured my program differently, and think you can do a lot of that culture work on the side. So we have a social calendar that our band council puts on, and that social calendar is essentially, it's like a little Google form that the kids can submit events to. And so like it'll be like a dog park party we did one summer where we scheduled it in late May when everybody was around, and there's a dog park just down the street from our building. I said, bring your dogs, bring yourselves, and we'll hang out. And we set it for like August 10th. So way in the future. And it's one of those things that 40 kids show up to, and nobody's ever met everybody's dogs, and it was awesome. And I think really the cool thing is that they really take ownership of it. They went to the corn maze last week. And it's one of those things that, that our boosters and I have decided that it's really important that we pay for those tickets. It has nothing to do with music. It has nothing to do with band or anything like that. But I think that every kid should be able to go do something with their friends, no matter if they can afford it or not. So, those little $11 tickets to the corn maze might keep a kid in band for 4 years once they make friends, and them not having to pay for it is a huge deal. And then what else? I mean, there's a lot of jamming at lunch. I don't know if this program looks so different than a lot of people's. I think we just really hammer home the fact that you got to be nice to each other, and that we're all in this together as a team. There are no, like star players or anything like that. We have great players, but this program all falls apart. I tell them all the time, Jazz One, they're rent-a-kids now. Like I don't know, they're great. Awesome. But the real meat of the program are the second and third bands. And if those kids disengage, this all falls apart in a year or two. So they need to feel really valued, and through those kind of events and our leadership program, our mentorship program rather, I think they find a place really quickly.
What you talked about the playing at the lunch. Do you do a lot of like peer stuff at lunch, sectionals at lunch, or what kind of stuff goes on musically too?
Yeah, so if I can stand it, I actually don't have an office. I'm sitting in my room. So there are some lunches, we do quiet lunches where Mr. McCurdy gets to eat in silence. But out here, there'll be a combo jamming, and then we've also got 2 practice rooms. And so most of the sections will stake out a day, like jazz 1 saxes Tuesday at lunch. I could always count on them. Tuesday at lunch coming in. And then the jam is where I think a lot of the real mixing happens. Is there'll be a Jazz 1 kid on piano and a Jazz 3 kid on drums and a Jazz Lab kid who picked up bass 2 weeks ago trying to play a blues, and that's where they kind of see that the Jazz 1 kids aren't crazy monsters. And the Jazz 3 kids and the Jazz Lab kids deserve to, play with them and hang out. And so there's 2 sides to the equation. Jazz 1 has to reach down, and Jazz 2 and Jazz 3 got to be confident and unafraid to reach up and ask for help.
Yeah. But is it something that you notice though, that where the older kids are guiding, and it doesn't have to be older and younger. It could be just more, the more the talented kids and, the newer kids. Do you notice that that's been kind of like the culture of like, those older kids reach down and that those kids look up to that, and then it just builds that next set of kids? Because as a jazzer myself, I'm always thinking, who's my lead trumpet going to be in 3 years? Like I'm thinking that the minute oh my god, he's a sophomore, he's got a G, so now I gotta have a kid in 3. My brain works that way, where I've got to be replacing every single component, so I'm either working my way down. And so when you said hand a kid a bass and 2 weeks later, that's truth. Just put the
Absolutely.
ownership, put the ownership on the kid. Guess what, they'll figure it out. Stay out of their way.
Yeah. And I mean, like, as much as directors like to have their names attached to stuff, this is not my band. This is a band that I work for, and it's these kids' bands. And I can throw out every analogy I have, where I tell the kids that near the end of the year, this band will never play again. Like, I could call an alumni concert, one of you is going to be gone. This band will never play again. This is your chance. This is your year. This Jazz 2, Jazz 3, Jazz 1. And then after this, it's gone. And so you need to make the most of every single opportunity you have, and make sure that the rest of the program also has that kind of investment. And yeah, like, whose chair do you want to be in 2 years? Or if you are in Jazz 1, are you working just as hard as the kids that you're idolizing, or the professionals that you're idolizing on your records? Like, have you done that work?
How do you get, this is kind of me from the outside looking at your program, and how do you get your kids to improv at such a high level? Because I as I say, as someone who's had 36 years of jazz bands, there's a secret to me that to get kids to that level, and it isn't me. Is it something programmatic? Is something where the kids go in the society? Like, I know here in Vancouver we've got there's a jazz jam at one of the places down here in Vancouver that, come to find out, somebody that I went to not high school with, but we went to the same high school, runs, and I did not know that until like 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh yeah, the jazz just gets passed down from the pros. So that's one of those spots I know. Is it the combos? What's the secret of Grant?
Yeah, and we do have a lot of student combos that just form, you know. I would love to have some sort of a Google form for that. I like Google Forms. But but yeah, I mean there's anywhere from, you know, 2 to 6 running around at any one time doing stuff around town. And Portland has a really great jazz culture, especially for younger students, and it's gotten better and better every single year. Um, I guess the secret, if I had to call it a secret, is that I make sure that my kids are absolutely woven into the jazz scene here in Portland. And so, you know, when I bring people in to work with the kids, I make sure that they're a young player for the most part that is personable, that plays in town a lot, and that plays at gigs that the kids can go see. Because you know, saying the kid to go see the symphony, sure, that works. But if you could, you know, boil that down into, oh, well, there's actually like this, you know, $10 thing that's happening at this little recording studio, and you can see the same player playing jazz, it's a little bit more accessible to the kids. It's less intimidating, and they feel like little celebrities when they know the person on stage and they can go say hi to them. And through that, I think our kids really do kind of find themselves really knowledgeable about the scene here in Portland. And and that gigging around is really where I think the improv comes from. We also host jams. I've got a student who has finagled his church once a month or something like that, and it's kind of an open call to all grant musicians that want to come. But I know other ones from other schools come too. I think maybe the thing that really can help aid that we do is that all of the program learns the same few head charts to start the year. So, you know, we'll do Killer Joe at the beginning of the year, but every band all the way down to Jazz Lab will learn Killer Joe and the melody and the chords and, you know, all the extra stuff that you got to do, so that if a Jazz Lab kid walks to a random, you know, jam somewhere and sees a Grant kid, they know that, oh, that kid knows Killer Joe and St. Thomas and Bags Groove and all these different tunes, so that they have the tools ready to like take that shot. Because if I was when I was in high school, I wouldn't have felt comfortable going to a jam whatsoever. I not even close. And I played at a pretty high level when I was in high school, but I still didn't take that next step to really like get out into the scene. And I just want to make that opportunity really comfortable for kids, because you know, once they really experience being at a jam and being on stage, I don't know many kids that are like, that was fun, and then never do it again. And then we talk about improv here, like in class. We talk about guide tone lines. Kids write solos out. I think one of the things that gets missed with improv a lot is that everybody says it's a language, but nobody teaches it like a language. Everybody, like, if you think about it, you know, reading, writing, speaking, and then hearing. So those 4 things, if you're asking a kid to improvise a solo for the first time in front of their friends, you are asking them to write something, read it aloud in front of an audience that they don't really understand, and try and pronounce it correctly. And we expect them to be comfortable with that. And that's just not feasible, I think, for a lot of students. So that scaffolding has to happen. They have to do some easy transcriptions and all of that stuff to get them the confidence to be able to speak the language.
Were you a jazzer growing up? Curiously.
You know, I have a lot less jazz experience than I think a lot of people know.
Well, that's
Um, my-
that's why I'm asking, because I'm a classically trained player that learned his jazz. Because as you said earlier, you go to college. Mine was, I didn't even take jazz ped. They didn't have it. I took jazz history, which meant I got to study stuff and then go teach a jazz band with zero experience. I went to the high school jazz program, but I could play, and I was a good player, but all my experience came from deciding how I got there and trying to apply that to the kids, and finding out that, I want my students to have all those experiences I didn't get, because I feel like I would have been a jazzer had someone given me the things that I can give to the students. I was just
yeah,
curious.
I took lessons from a guy, Tracy Canope. He's up in Tacoma. And he used to play with the Tommy Dorsey band and was a like hardcore jazz guy, and still is. Um, and I got through some, of the big transcriptions and a little bit of omnibook stuff. But I was that loud tenor one soloist at the end of high school. Like I had no kind of style or awareness whatsoever. Um, but I really enjoyed my time in jazz band, and I thought it was really fun. And as I grew up and kind of saw students growing up in the jazz band, especially, I kind of realized what a vehicle it could be for self-expression for students. Um, and I love listening to the music. I mean, and I can play a little bit, and I demonstrate in class and all that, but you know, a lot of my kids get better than me by the time they're out of here, which is fine with me. I don't care. Um, so yeah, I mean, light experience, but there obviously does need to be some fundamental training. Like you got to be able to play through changes. You got to know how to structure a guide tone line. You got to do all these things if you really want to do jazz, in my opinion, like the authentic and most feasible way.
It's funny because you say guide tones, and I always think to myself how many people out there don't even know what the guide tones are out of the jazz things. I mean, it's maybe one of those things. Like I feel like maybe down, across the country, we should offer a little bit more pedagogy out there, like some resources out there, because that's guide tones are amazing. But if you don't know what they are, what's a guide tone? I'll start a simple. I asked my students this year, do any of you know what a bebop scale is? And 0% new. And I said, well, let's go through and you're right, it's really about building that language. And so I was curious how you got the language so fast at your school, and not only just so fast, but I mean your top band, I will say it flat out, your band should be auditioning for Midwest and going to play there, because holy cow, it would be amazing I'd be
Thank
the
you.
first one in the audience clapping and going about it, because your band way belongs there. So to anyone listening, it is that good of a band.
I very much appreciate that. I think is it as dumb as passion is infectious? Like I just love to hear the kids succeed, and I think that finding like true success, it just feeds itself.
Well, there's some other things that you said that I want to hit on, because one of them
Yeah,
is
totally.
you talked about, and I think we both came to this agreement and behind the stage today, which was, when, I will give myself Monday through Friday. But when it comes to the weekends or the evenings or when I'm not those are my own time. How, you are great at balance. And if you ever see Chris on Facebook, I'm always like your summers. I like, you have like some great trips on there. But have you, is it something purposeful that you've enforced of that work-life balance? And, what is your work-life balance? How do you keep yourself this energized?
Whew. Yeah. Another question I would love to know the answer to.
Right.
I'm really careful about my time, and I'm really careful about what we do here at Grant. I think it's very, very easy for a director to say, "Oh, I want to do this and this and this, and I want to have a good this program and a good this program," and then you realize that you like have no time to do anything else. And if that's your value set, that's totally fine. I I like to think of myself as a person first and a teacher second. And again, like you said, Monday through Friday, when I'm at work and I need to be in front of kids, it's go, go, go. Saturday, Sunday, it's for you. And I think a lot of young teachers have the energy to not do that and get away with it. But I'm 33, and like if I was at the pace that I was when I was 26, 27, no chance of staying in this career more than 5 years. And you have to be okay with not being the best all the time. I think a lot of directors think that this needs to be like an exponential graph up. I mean, take a couple more years to build and save a couple weekends. Like, you don't need to change the world. I don't need to win every competition. I don't need to have the best wind ensemble and jazz ensemble and pit orchestra, and like, give these kids a fun time, because the second you get overwhelmed, and I'm at fault as this too, like the second it gets too much, you become a director that they don't want to be around. And then it all falls apart. It's a house of cards at all the best programs. And it's just the directors that have a really good long-term view and a really good kind of middle-term view that can see when things are getting too much and back away from it. We don't do marching band. It's okay.
Yeah, And for those of you not in the Pacific Northwest, it rains here, and quite a bit.
Yes.
And so, so some of us don't have marching band programs. I have not had one for a while, but if there's a whole different culture, and I'm going to shift the gear to the pep band thing, because I think the pep band story, I kind of, it was going around Facebook about the pep band story, and I'll have you tell the pep band story. And you were like, I was like, when somebody posted about it, because, you were all over the internet, whether you know it or not. And I'm like, I know this guy. And you need to know that what he's fighting for is really what all of us should be fighting for. So let's talk about that pep band story for just a second, if you don't mind. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. So I think that, there's a lot of nitty gritty in every teaching contract. Our teaching contract said, for our stipends that were above and beyond the normal workday, 3 or more productions. And, obviously any band director is chuckling right now. Because the or more was obviously an issue. And we had kind of just been given the runaround by a few different groups saying that this would get done. And I later came to find out that the clause saying that they would kind of adjust the table and write in all these different things had been in the contract since like 2017. And so, the band directors kind of got together and we were like, look, they're not gonna do this unless we follow the contract. And so that, you can call it a strike. We didn't really believe it was a strike because we weren't being paid for it in the first place.
Right.
We were doing our 3 home concerts.
Yeah, can I put a little bit of context to the audience,
Go
especially
for
if
it.
they're
Yeah.
listening on there? And so what happened was, Portland Public Schools went on strike. Was it the year before or 2 years before? I don't really
It was 2 years before.
2 years before, and the contract languages you were told that it was going to happen later, if I think I remember correctly. And so what happened was the expectations on band directors out here when you don't have marching band are, I always tell people I don't have marching band, but boy, my basketball and my football expectations are just as much, if not more, than you realize. But what happened was, you were told that was going to get fixed, so that it was the contract language. So you're basically getting paid for what you're doing, because basically all the directors in Portland Public Schools were basically doing pep band for free. Is that kind of the right idea? So yeah, and so rather than keep doing it because it's the right thing to do, it's good for the kids, and the directors in the district took a stand that no, we need to get this fixed first, and we'll gladly do it, but fix the language in the contract. So I think it's that a little bit more clarity on what it was.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You should have explained it.
I'm like 4 miles away, so I'm a fan of the system over there.
Right. Yeah, and so I guess the ending point is that we wanted to demonstrate that we weren't getting paid for this, and that surprised a lot of people, but also B, that you really can't overlook these things like pep band. Like when we've got 180 kids up in the stands at a football game, you're going to notice when they're not there. And so often we just continue to do the job because we think that's what's best. And I kind of treated this situation as not just advocating for myself and my students and the colleagues across the district, but advocating for the future of band directing here in this district. And once this is codified in, they have a place to start talking. But until then, like every young teacher that comes in, I mean, I'm the youngest band director at the high school level here for sure. When you're at the start of the salary at a band deal, you're getting a little bit of extra money, but everything helps, and it helps me feel secure so that I can continue to work really hard during the day. So I think that's kind of that was the point, is to show kids how to speak up for yourself responsibly, I guess.
Well, what I get from it, and it goes back to like, the expectations that we have amongst ourselves is, how much is too much. And that goes back to that mental health part of it, is when can you say no to the things that you should do and the things that you shouldn't do. And I think it's important that we set goals as teachers, and we live up to those goals and not try to overextend ourselves, because sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking that if we do A, B is going to happen. If we do B, C is going to happen. But I worry about burnout for teachers. I worry about burnout for kids. But it was very unique to see that whole thing progress and see it go, because it went nationwide. It wasn't just here, and that's what caught me off guard. And I thought it'd be neat to talk about it a little bit, because I think it also, think about this. What does that teach the students? Because I'm sure every kid wanted to do pep band, but it kind of put the value, your teacher is there to be, the guide of the program. And, we can't do it without this guides. And, here's, protecting, as you said, all of us teachers out there. Don't we want the best teacher in front of our students at all times,
Right.
whether it's our program or not?
Yeah. 100%.
So, and so let's go to this. What are some of the other things that are going through my head right now? Because anyway, thanks for sharing the pep band story. But
Yeah, no problem.
I think that a lot of it has to do with, like, we could play hot take. We could do, like, what are some of your hot takes that you've noticed, or we could talk about things like, what would you, now that you've been at your program for 5 years, what would you have done different? Or just thinking about from the culture standpoint. Let's just play some games here. So, okay, now you've been at Grant for 5 years. What are some goals that you have, or what are some things that you can pick? Where would you like to take this conversation next?
Gosh, I think my goal for this program would to make it so that I don't have to work as hard, to really give the students so much ownership that they can really start to kind of dribble the ball themselves and understand how this whole program works from a really fundamental standpoint. So, we talk about leadership and mentorship. I have all of the kids fill out a survey at the beginning of the year and, wipe all the data that the kid, you don't want other kids to see. But there are questions about, like, what's your favorite food? What class are you good at? What class are you bad at? What are other activities you're involved in school? Download all of that, hand it to the band council, especially, with the incoming freshmen or new members. And then the band council basically pairs them up with a mentor. And it's a student that's already in the program, might play their instrument, might not, but they also might really like chemistry and be paired with this freshman that also really likes chemistry. And so those kind of like leadership things help them understand that, I'm not just thinking about how to put a really good band on stage. I'm thinking about how do I create a culture that kids want to be a part of. And so, doing those things takes time, and it takes 2 or 3 years to really codify. I think this year is the first year that we're like really feeling like we've got it down. And I'm okay with, taking 2 years to do that. Again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think I have different requirements than a lot of programs. This might be along your hot take thing.
I'm writing down the word hot take as we speak.
Here's your hot take. I don't require any kid to do both concert band and jazz band. And that's a twofold decision. One, my jazz bands are during the day. So if you want jazz bands during the day and you don't want to be up there at, 6:30 in the morning or whatever, then you need to allow them to not take both, under the impression that they are going to get all of their fundamental work done as well. And that's also on me. I need to figure out how to teach fundamentals in the jazz program.
Hot take back. I can do this one all day. In my career, in my observation, and again, I am not the greatest jazzer, but I will tell you the best technicians across my life out of my career has been the jazzers. I've never seen, I always say this, people who can improvise have better technique than you realize. It might not be as, technically accurate as somebody who plays, classically, but the things that somebody who improvises at a high level is ungodly good. And when you hang around professional musicians and you see what they've got and they've got going in their head, it's like, yeah, this is like theory 5. You only go up to theory 4 in college, and these people are on theory 5 and they just know it.
Yep.
And so, I that was one of my things I promised myself when I was going to retire was if I was ever going to require a kid to do jazz in the school day, then I wouldn't require them to do, they take one class. Can we really build upon that? It's not something where I'm at now, but but that when I thinking about what you're doing at your program, that was like the idea that I had, was that because I was having to teach wind ensemble, and I did it last year. I had to teach wind ensemble and jazz band during the same period, and somehow try to pull off both ensemble, it gets worse, and somehow try to pull off both ensembles in the same period and still do Music for All, still do LCRMEA, still do all the festivals. But getting the kids to go to that next level, it took a little bit of a kick, and we were just about finding our stride last year. And so, doing things different isn't wrong. And I think that's one of those things that we can all as teachers be a little bit, more passionate about. What's good for your kids doesn't necessarily have to fit what's good for anyone else. It just has to be what's good. If your parents are happy, your administration is happy, and your school is happy, where are you really in life?
Right. Yeah. And so what if my best trumpet player is not in my wind ensemble? Like it, I don't understand, jamming them all into one room and then forcing them to do something else. I've experienced a lot of programs that don't have bassists or pianists or guitarists. Well, I can probably tell you why. It's because they're sitting back on a marimba and don't want to do concert band, and that's okay. We tell kids that, like, if you don't want to do band anymore and you want to do choir, that's okay. Go pursue your passion. Why do we do it internally?
But how many teachers are okay with that? I will say, I'm going to be hot takey all day now. I will say that not everyone is okay with that. I am fine. If you want to go here's my thing. There's business, Mr. Duarte, and there's personal, Mr. Duarte, and those two people are different. And so if you're a kid that wants to do choir and you were in band, you have my permission to go. Follow your heart, because what it comes down to is me as where I'm at in my life. If they don't want something, what did I not provide where I'm not the bigger draw?
Yep. Make it your fault.
It is my fault, because if right. Now, if somebody told me to quit, I always say this: if I was told to quit saxophone, it's not happening. I don't even know how that's going to even occur. But not all kids are like that. And so what I think, to me as the teacher, if that kid wants to quit saxophone, sorry, I'm picking on saxes today. Not my fault. It's totally my fault. What is it? Why do they want to quit? And that's what I don't think most of us tend to solve. If something's not going right, it is. How do we create, and this is my question, and I'm actually asking, how do we create the demand for learning over the expectation of supply? We hand all these things out that our kids are expected to do, but if they don't want to do it, and I'm not saying that this in terms of like, what the music we pass out or anything like that, but if your kids, you are excited to come to work today, what kind of impact does that have on your program?
Oh, absolutely. Again, passion is infectious. And excellence is infectious. And I will tell you, I struggle sometimes coming to work in a good mood. And I think everybody does too. But I think if you also say to your students on a day that, you feel like trash, I came in sick last week, and I was like, I'm going to try and struggle through this day. And if I can't do the next day, whatever. But you tell your kids, you say, hey, I'm sick, or hey, I had a really bad morning and coffee spilled on my pants and my dog, lunged at another dog during our walk. Can you guys pick up a little bit of the slack and we'll get through this period? And they love that responsibility. Like, kids want to be relied upon. And if you don't, then they're never going to learn those new leadership and kind of just humanness.
Yeah. My dream is that I walk into a program I'll say it even better. When I have a substitute, the band does it better when I'm gone than when I'm there, because they know what they need to do. And here's Craig, my awesome teaching partner. Every program is different. That's what that's what can make comparison so difficult. Completely agree. To only compare yourself to your own past. Are we constantly improving? And that is exactly what I say to students all the time. Are we doing better the next day? Because it doesn't matter what happened in the past. It doesn't matter what's going to happen in the future. What matters is today better than yesterday? I don't mean that as the only thing. And there's Craig, bravo for embracing the uniqueness of your own band program. But I will say your program is more than unique. It's just I'm enamored with what the product that's coming out with it. And it's one of those things where I think here's another hot take. I think it's so, you have it down so well for you. that it's one of those things that you just know how to do. And I feel like maybe I should, not me, but a bunch of us could just come over and watch for a while and try to figure out the things. Cause I think if it comes naturally for any of us, it's hard to say why it works, cause it's
correct.
You're not a textbook person.
Yeah, I may not be. Sorry to my college professors. Yeah, I think maybe before we go, just another kind of unique side that I think a lot of directors might. Can we talk a little bit about the girls combo?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that I think I'm most proud of in our program, and we are in our third year now of kind of an all girls jazz program / combo. It's this kind of nebulous thing still, but it really has driven the kind of the diversity of my program through the roof, which is really fantastic. It's called Jazz Changes PDX, and it is a really mostly student-led organization that kind of evolved out of a lot of your prototypical jazz band problems of not enough girls in the program and the boys being not as kind and respectful as they think they are. And I think one of the things that really floored me was I had this amazing band, and a couple of the girls came to me and said, the guys are being really vibey and it's really bumming us out, and we don't want to really be in here that much anymore. And going along, with Make It Your Fault, I was like, oh my God, this is all my fault. I've created this, this version of excellence that's turning some kids off. And so I said, okay, tell me everything and bring me up to speed, because I don't know their experience being a white male who was in a jazz band that also had a lot of white males in it in high school. I never noticed a problem, and that was my own internal bias. And if you can't check your internal bias and actually look around and see what other people are seeing, you have no chance of making a really welcoming environment. And so through this conversation, I put the boys in check in our own meeting, and it was like, being this way is unacceptable in my room. And so the girls, we had almost critical mass to put a full combo together. So I said, okay, let's do this. And what that has turned into is from a performing combo to really a kind of satellite program here at Grant, where all of the girls get together and do little lectures, or they'll learn tunes together. And this is not just the kind of performing combo Jazz Changes. A lot of our older students are in that and go around, but they also run a camp for middle school girls to come in and improvise. We hire a bunch of female artists from around the state to come down and work with them for the day in an environment that is just them. And I think it's just one of the coolest things that we do, and it's possible in every program, no matter what it looks like, is you need to make those spaces and carve those areas out for your students so that they can kind of take up that space. And they do. Once they do, it's a fantastic combo. They're out about town all the time, and they've done really well as well as growing and playing at a really high level. And it's changed the way girls kind of feel about jazz here at Grant. And now in our third year, I'm starting to see kids that were in that little middle school camp come through to my program. And to me, I mean, it's just so valuable that I've got this kind of ancillary, organism that kids can be a part of.
Yeah, we probably didn't notice it growing up because we weren't female, and we didn't notice because
exactly.
As I got through college, I will say, some of the things that I learned growing up is it wasn't prevalent because it probably didn't feel good, and it probably wasn't provided. When I got to college, the very first lead alto was an oboe. She was the first year oboe player in wind ensemble, ungodly good. Yeah, she was also the ungodly good lead alto for the jazz band. And so it was always one of my things when I was at Deer Valley, I didn't know I was going to be an administrator. I had an all-female jazz band. I was short one. I was either short, it wasn't the bass. Oh, I was short like one trombone or something. And I would have had a complete big band, and I was going to do it. And I didn't know I was leaving at the time. So, but I would love to talk more about that in the future, because I think that's one of those things that we as teachers can provide, or even just talk to you, off the show, because I think that's one of those things that I believe in as well, is providing opportunities where they don't exist, because again, we are the creators of our future. We're trying to do
Yep.
all those things that we learned and hand it down and do it better and get creative. But man, this show, what's cool about this show to me is I feel like I'll never run out of topics. And when we finally get talking, I feel like the show ends. And then we're just getting to where I want to start talking about some stuff. And then Craig has a comment for both of you. The next time you spill coffee, we'll bring it to you. We are
Oh, great.
we're professional. I've got Portland roasters going in the office right now. If you haven't been to Portland, it's in the airport, and I just found it by accident, but it's one of those lovely things. But we are reaching the end of our time. You do have children, and you do have to go pick up some things. So let's talk about this. I always been, lately on the show, I've been doing final thoughts, but whatever. But it's now I just like to give the guest, just a chance to say something to someone, or talk about something, or your program, anything you want to. But I want to give the last, final thought, so to speak, over to you. But there's no rules. It can be anything you want to talk about, or sum up everything we did today, whatever it is. So, all right, Mr. McCurdy, this is your final thought for the day. What is it?
Oh God. I guess I think, I would really like to speak to younger teachers, because it's a really hard job. And I want to normalize that it's a really, really hard job. Taking care of yourself in today's time and taking care of your kids trumps everything for me right now in value. There's nothing more than I want than for my kids to just have a really great time in high school band. And my program looks different than everybody else's program. But I think the best thing that a young teacher can do is to find what you're passionate about, and don't be afraid to shape band in that way. Don't let band be what you had in high school or what your college professors told you it needs to be, because what we really need right now is community. And the only way you can get community is if you show up as your authentic self every single day. If you don't, it's going to be a caricature of what you think band is, or whatever teacher you're trying to teach like. And then just be real. Always be real, and just be a good human for your kids. And the success will come, and it'll look like different things. It doesn't look like a really great band every single year, because that's stressful. And I don't want that. I want really good kids. I don't really need really good bands. And learn your secondaries, everybody. Please learn your secondaries. So much pedagogy comes from actually playing that instrument. And I think a lot of my teaching revolves around the physics of how to make sound, rather than the artistry. Like what does your face actually have to do? And you can't teach that way unless you actually put the horn to your face. And love your family, and turn off the lights on Friday, and don't come back unless you have to.
Truer words have never been spoken. All right, Mr. McCurdy, that is what an amazing share today. I would still love to have. I always do this to everyone, but it's true. I would love to have you back again, because I think we're just finally getting to the chat of things that we could chat about. But to our audience out there, we're going to share some socials and some email. Let's start with your email. It's CMCC. I'll just say it's so hard. It's CMcCurdy at pps.net. I'm very envious of your district email. How you got pps.
Pretty clean.
Yeah, sometimes you get, remember the old days, you had like something .k12. It just got crazy. Yeah. But CMCCURDY at pps.net is email. Please email them, especially if you have questions, or if you want to know what guide tones are. That's a good one.
Man, I have so many PDFs to throw at everybody. So email me if you want some stuff.
And Instagram at ChrisM592 is his personal Instagram, and then at grant.band. Follow them. If you get a chance, if you're from around here, go listen to them. It is a pure treat. And I'll say it, start with the third band, because it's a treat from the word go, and it's just great. But thank you so much for being on the show today. Like I said, I feel like we can talk one day. We'll just have to talk more, because we have never really had a chance to sit and actually shoot the breeze. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
What a great time. All right. Well, thank you for being here today. Wasn't that fun? He's got such ideas. And I will say this to the audience, to our listeners, really do email him and listen to him, because I think that man is pure genius. And what he's doing is hard to explain unless you see it, hear it, and experience it. Kind of like music. You just got to experience. Anyway, thank you for spending your part of your day with us. As we wrap up, again, I'd love everyone to share this. You can share it on YouTube, share the, you can even share the links for the audio versions, anything, just share. It builds this community, and I feel like we're getting stronger and growing together. You can always email me at david.duarte@me.com. I have my website, by the way, which is davidduarte.org, and it's always changing and morphing. Like right now I'm in PLC world, so I'm always adding to it. There's lesson plans, unit plans. If you have questions about anything, just contact me. I'm always willing to share it. I've got my Instagram at Culture Before Content. And don't forget, this episode, along with many others, is available at musicforall.org/podcast. And lastly, a heartfelt thankful to Music for All for bringing the show to life, and to Yamaha, who is our national presenting sponsor, for making this all possible. So again, I thank you for coming. I hope to see you next time. But I'm David Duarte. Thanks for being a part of our culture, and I look forward to seeing you next time.